even in its standard guise, Nordkapp's 905 is a pretty exciting looking boat. But here at the Southampton Boat Show, the appearance of the V12 variant is reason for even more excitement. So let's make our way around the back end and take a good look. As we do so, let's notice these, the black rails, powder coated aluminium, makes it look particularly cool. Same goes for the roof there, which conventionally would be silver. Here it's a nice jet black. It looks very steely, very purposeful. But arguably, the most purposeful angle would be this. Now that is Mercury's prodigious 600 horsepower, 7.6 litre V12. And that is what gives this boat its name. Now, equipped with a pair of 250s, the standard 905 will see you to about 45 knots, but apparently with this 600 horsepower unit on the transom, this boat is good for 55 knots. So that's a hell of a difference. But according to the guys here, it's actually relatively frugal, believe it or not. Once it shifts into the higher gear, around about 3,500 RPM, and you're running at 25 knots, you can apparently achieve about 2 litres per nautical mile with this engine, which should take you to a range of about 120 nautical miles from this 300 litre tank. So that's not too bad at all. Now let's have a little look here. Obviously, this is a Nordic boat, so beneath this V12 logo, we have the ubiquitous stern anchor. And if we look over to the starboard side, we have an additional locker of similar proportions beneath there, plus a swim ladder built into the back end. But we have no grab handles set into this deck, so getting out might prove a touch challenging. Now I'll spin myself around because we have the fuel filler back here out of the way, plus the transom shower well positioned, and this is hot and cold mixer tap as well. It's good to see that we've got dedicated places for our fenders on both sides, and this is a symmetrical layout back here. So even though we have a big pilot house forward, this cockpit looks to me relatively versatile, and when you look at the details, it proves itself so. Now, we have a 2-man bench facing aft towards a 3 or 4-man bench there with a fitting for a table in the centre. And these are actually modules that are held down with little thumb screws because there are threads built into the deck. So if I open this one up, it opens up in one go without removing cushions. You'll see there is the little screw. So if you like, you can just unscrew this entire unit and take it away. Leave it on the pontoon side. Open up your aft deck entirely for whatever you like. You can do the same with this aft unit too, which suggests to me that this would be a good space for a bit of fishing. And of course you can swing that backrest over, and then you have a nice aft facing settee for water sports and for great views. Now let's make our way forward again. As I say, symmetrical layout, so equal side decks on both sides. Move past the skipper's side door there and up a couple of steps to the bow. Again, we have lovely detailing here. It feels quite trick, it feels quite souped up. And actually, this is quite trick in a way. This is a kind of concertina cushion that opens right out to the bow there. So we've got a lovely big long sun lounger with elevated headrest there for comfort and cup holders built in. But as you can see, you can fold that back into its little recess between these mouldings, and then using these poppers you stretch a canvas over the top to secure that in place when you're underway. So that's super simple. And of course when we move it back, we expose this for extra light down below a hatch. You can stick your baggage down below as well by that means. And further forward we have space, plenty of space in this section for your anchor and your chain. It's a step through forepeak, as you would expect of a boat from this part of the world. And this decking is really quite practical. I like it a lot, and it feels really good underfoot. As we make our way aft down the port side deck, it's worth noticing we've got an additional couple of boarding points here to supplement those at the bow and the stern. We've got a nice long grab rail that runs all the way along that rooftop, and we've also got a really quite impressive sunroof. Now this is canvas on top, it looks fairly conventional if extremely large, but actually on the underside of this that's lined with Alcantara, so it's really quite luxurious. It's quite a piece of work. Now let's head further aft and into the cockpit, where incidentally we've got additional storage under these peripheral lockers plus an extra hatch in the centre here. That's actually access to a technical area, so not so great for storage, but either way if you want to get in there you've got to remove these seating pods first. Open that aft door and step into the pilot house, and you take a really quite significant step down, and that generates excellent headroom in here. Close that aft door to keep the rain out. Even at the aft end headroom is good, but when we step forward beneath that Alcantara lined sunroof, it really is tremendous, and that in turn gives you a pretty good view. You get a sense of openness in here that you don't tend to get in many pilot house boats, and yeah, the windscreen itself is relatively low profile, but again, narrow stanchions, good all-round visibility. Everything feels just about right in here from that perspective. And if we look at the general arrangement of this pilot house, you'll see we have the helm seat on the starboard side with a big skipper's door onto that side deck. We have an additional seat on the port side for the co-pilot with a swing over backrest. This incidentally is the V12 design, more with this Alcantara with red stripes down the centre. Quite a sporting motif as you'd expect. And then we have a bench on the starboard side behind the helm and a little L-shaped seat on the port side facing across to one another with a fixture for a table there in the centre. Now, easing this forward generates an additional space here, so you can fit 3 people around there. 2 people could sit on this side, and then this helm seat that can also spin around. So when you open that up, you actually have a seating area around that table for 6 people. That's all pretty good for a pilot house of this scale, but actually this is not quite as the V12 ought to be. As I say, it's a very high spec model, and it should come with a sink and a gas hob under there to supplement the big fridge that sits down there beneath the helm seat. At the moment there's just a storage cavity in there filled with various uprights for the tables. On the port side we have another storage space beneath there. And that contains additional uprights and tables, but actually trying to get in there is quite a difficult thing. There's a little recess there to get your fingers in. You try to lift it up, it's all quite difficult because we've got velcro at the back, we've got little knobs under there to retain it in its space, and it's all a bit of a fuss. So I'd like to see an easier mechanism than that. That said, this is a relatively practical boat in other ways. We have the diesel heater fitted down inside this cavity here, and that has outlets not just in this pilot house and down forward in that cabin, but also out here in the aft cockpit, so that when you cover that with canvases, close it off from the elements, you can heat that space of the boat too. Now let's take a look over to the helm itself, which I have to say is pretty impressive for the most part. Again, we've got a lovely seat with this Nordkapp detailing and the V12 logo, beautiful fabrics, your own bolster plus you go faster stripes in accordance with the V12 style. We also have plenty of fore and aft movement here on these runners, loads of space here to make yourself comfortable, plus an adjustable wheel too. That moves up and down no problem. And if I move myself into position and show you my vantage point, we have again good visibility plus a couple of 12-inch plotters, the engine display and the fusion remote up above in the offshore pilot house style, and all the stuff you want for your right hand is exactly there. We've got the switch gear on the left plus a cup holder, and here for your right hand we've got your tabs, we've got your bow and stern thrusters, and we've got your throttle. Now if I open that door, you'll see that this stuff is in the ideal position to stand out on that side deck, and we also have good access to a cleat there as well as to a boarding point. So that's ideal, but what I'm not so keen on is the position of the throttle. I mean, it falls very nicely to hand, it's very comfortable, but at the same time, if I move in and show you how it protrudes, it does look a little like if you had the engine running and you're moving in and out, you could easily snag the throttle and cause yourself a bit of a problem. So I'm not so keen on that. Now let's close up that skipper's door and take a look at the cabin, which interestingly is entirely open plan. As you can see, there's no bulkhead nor even a sliding door. It's completely open access, aside from this privacy curtain, the set of lights at the access point. And the first thing you see when you move in here is this, which I would assume is a changing seat. So you can sit there and get your clothes changed in the loftier part of the cabin. But it's of sufficient scale, I would certainly say, that you'd sleep a child there while the parents are sleeping up in the bow. The windows here are very dynamic. Beautiful shape. It's a beautiful looking boat actually. And details like that certainly help. And this is quite cool too. In addition to the rest of the lighting, we've got these little sort of metallic buttons with light splaying out top and bottom, more of those in the front. And as we look forward, you notice that this bed has two mattresses, one on top of the other. So I assume that's a comfort upgrade. But the deck head here is pretty low. And yet the natural trim of the boat, plus those lights, suggest that you'd want to sleep with your head forward. So we'll creep onto the bed and slide ourselves in and see how that feels. Now this is certainly a very good footprint. And if I lie myself with my head in the tapering part of this forepeak, well, it's certainly wide enough for two people. That's no problem at all. And we've got this hatch directly above us, which gives you plenty of light and a sense of openness that low deck head suggests wouldn't be there. We've also got this panel here. The ambient light from that is delightful, sort of LED strips behind this fabric section. There's not much else to look at up here, and the windows actually start further off. So if I spin myself around and orchestrate myself that way instead, well, actually, in terms of the views, that's a lot more pleasant. In terms of the fact that my head is now slightly downhill, that's less pleasant. So it's entirely up to you how you use it, but certainly the footprint is very good. The lighting is pleasant, the views are decent, the fabrics are lovely. And if we spin around and take a look at the heads, that's not a bad effort either. The head sits opposite that port changing area, and if I open it up again, you'll see there's plenty of this oak face ply, and it's a pretty good scale. There's no shower fitting though, and no deck drains, so it's not a wet room. It's a dedicated heads compartment, but what you do get is a mirror on that leading bulkhead, plus some hangers for your gear, your towels. A nice bright light overhead, plus a window there, a sink and some storage, some ventilation and good access to the wiring on the back of the dash. But I have to say that is a tiny toilet, one of the tiniest toilets I've ever seen on a boat. It's quite possible actually that it was produced by the same people responsible for this compass, which looks like something out of a Christmas cracker. But I guess any compass, however small, is better than none. And any toilet, however small, is better than none. So there it is. That is the new Nordkapp 905 V12. And if the standard 905 is a beautiful boat, and I think it certainly is, well, this ramps that up to new levels. If that standard 905 is a high performance boat, and it certainly appears to be, well, again, this ought to ramp that up to new levels. But of course, sitting alongside at the Southampton Boat Show as a high spec, high performance, high powered variant of that 905, it's difficult to assess whether it's worth the extra investment. So we're going to get ourselves down to the south coast and give this one a full sea trial very soon.